After Lewis and Clark sent some of the team back east with reports and scientific samples for President Jefferson, the captains and the rest of their crew continued west. They rowed in 2 of their original pirogues, plus 6 new canoes made from hollowed-out trees. These canoes, about 30 feet long and 3 feet wide, were hard to balance. More than once, as the men were getting used to them, the canoes overturned in mid-river, forcing the men to fish out wet supplies before going on. The men had to get the supplies out of the water because the boats flipped over in the water and the supplies fell out. Despite this, Lewis wrote in his journal that the men were happy and healthy. Soon they left behind the flat plains and entered hilly land. Now the Missouri River became more difficult to travel. Forests of western red cedars lined the banks of the river. These beautiful trees were so important to Native Americans of the area that some Native Americans called themselves the people of the red cedar, performing special ceremonies before chopping down the huge evergreens. Lewis and Clark knew it would be impossible to take an entire tree back with them because of its gigantic size, almost 200 feet above the ground. That's as tall as a 20-story building. Nevertheless, the tree was so important to the lives of Native Americans that they knew they must gather samples and record its many uses. They knew they had to write down information about the tree's many uses in order to remember and share it. They drew pictures and collected branches, cones, and seeds. As they learned more about the western red cedar from the Native Americans in the area, both Lewis and Clark wrote about the importance of the western red cedar in their journals. The people and animals of the Northwest relied upon the tree for their existence or in order to survive. Native Americans used the bark of the tree to weave mats, baskets, and clothing, and they used the wood to build canoes. Elk ate the leaves and shoots of the enormous tree. Bears hibernated or slept through the winter in hollow cedar logs. The men heard often of the bears called grizzly bears that made their homes in the hollowed-out logs of the cedars. So as they made their way up the Missouri, William Clark warned, "Keep a sharp eye out for grizzly bears." One of the hunters said, "Don't worry, Captain. We've seen plenty of bears before back in Kentucky." "Black bears, yes. Grizzly bears, no. From what I hear, it's like the difference between a house cat and a lion." One day, Lewis and another man were out hunting along the riverbank. Suddenly, they saw 2 giant grizzly bears up ahead. The bears rose up on their hind legs, up and up, until they stood 8 feet tall. Then, roaring, the bears charged. Raising their rifles and taking careful aim, Lewis and his companion, or friend, shot one bear, but the other one kept coming right at them with frightening speed. "Run!" shouted Lewis, and the 2 men turned and ran for their lives. Lewis and the other man stopped running to take another shot, turned, took aim, and fired at the same instant. The loud bang was followed by a tense moment as the bear suddenly stopped running. It held still for a moment, and then it toppled over or fell forward. Only when they were sure that the grizzly bear was dead did Lewis and his companion carefully approach the animal. Lewis later wrote in his journal that the bear weighed between 500 and 600 pounds and was 8.5 feet tall. That's taller than 2 first graders, one standing on top of the other. After this frightening chase, Lewis told the whole party, "From now on, we must always move about and do even the simplest actions in parties or groups of 2 or more. One man alone going up against a grizzly would not stand a chance."